Welcome to the Code with Jason meetup. We're here again with our friend Duncan Hobbs from the World Cube Association. Duncan, welcome.
Thank you so much. Very, very good to be here. Very cool to see everyone again.
Good to have you. And you and I have been doing a few sessions where we talk about the technical situation you're working with and stuff like that. But if you want to just give a quick any context that you might want to give, we can share that general context and we can dive into whatever you'd like to discuss today.
Yeah, happily. So as Jason said, I'm with the World Cube Association. As you might have just picked up, I'm addicted to Rubik's Cubes, and we're an organization that exists for people like that. We help to kind of convene and sanction speed cubing competitions around the world, which is where people try to solve Rubik's Cubes and variants of that as fast as possible. I am part of the software team, and as the software team, we're in quite an interesting position at the moment where we are dealing with a legacy code base that was kind of built when people thought the World Cube Association would be, a bunch of people in the living room thinking about how to put competitions on, and okay, maybe some another country wants to host one as well. Here we are now with millions of results and tens of thousands of registered competitors, and we are watching the scale of our operation potentially double year on year. So we're having this incredible kind of scaling issue. At the same time as dealing with a fairly legacy code base. So one of the ways that we're trying to address that is by paying contributors, because up until now we've been totally volunteer run, and that's a very, very cool ethos. But unfortunately, when you try to make technical decisions based on however much free time you have that weekend, it doesn't always lead to the most deeply thought out and kind of future-proof designs. So we're in a position where we have the monolith, which kind of runs the whole organization. That thing has to keep going because that is the lifeblood of the organization. But we're also trying to rewrite and redesign our systems with the benefit of a bit more developer time and hindsight. So we are thinking about and currently implementing a transition to more of a service-based architecture through our first service being a registration system, which is how people sign up for competitions. And I think hopefully that wasn't too long. I think that's the long and the short of the context.
Very good. Yeah, I think that gives people context quite nicely. Okay, so I have my notes just out of arm's reach here. I'll grab them in a minute. But last time we talked about a number of things. One of the things we kind of talked about, I think, was priorities and like what's crucial and what we could live without and stuff like that. Like we would be more in trouble if we didn't do this versus if we didn't do this, that kind of thing. So I guess two questions for you. One, did you have a specific idea of something you wanted to talk about today? And if so, we can obviously talk about that. And then two, if you want to talk about this, did you have any thoughts? Has anything percolated since last time we talked? Thoughts stirred up, that kind of thing that you might want to discuss? I'll just leave it at that.
Sweet. One more piece of context has occurred to me. It's the disclaimer I give every time. I'm very junior on the team. And so I say all of this under kind of the correction of more senior members. If I mess up, sorry guys. So I think in terms of how to spend this session, I think we spent a lot of last session kind of defining some of the problems. And it might be interesting to spend this session talking about what some of the solutions might be, kind of what do you think some of the solutions might look like, and some of what we're thinking about at the moment, or kind of our current vision for trying to build our way out of where we are. That's one thought I have. And then the other thought I have is there has been kind of this service-based versus monolith-based architecture discussion. And I would be curious why one would advocate for a monolith as opposed to services as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so those two things are what are on my mind.
Okay. Let me real quick grab my notes so I can remind myself of some things we're talking about. At least I think this is the right notebook here. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Duncan, I found our last conversation so interesting that I went back and listened to the entire thing again and took a second round of notes
Oh,
just for my own
interesting.
purposes, because it's like an interesting archaeological exercise. No, anthropological
Anthropological,
exercise. I think that's what I
probably.
meant to
Yeah.
say. I always get those two
Yeah.
mixed up. Anyway, it's just like, this is one sample in the world of like the kinds of situations one tends to encounter, and there are unique aspects of it, but it's by no means an entirely unique situation. Anyway,
Absolutely.
do 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 do.
I will be right back. My cat wants to be let in.
Yeah. And I'm just looking over my notes here to remind myself of the stuff we were talking about. Ah, yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so one thing that I want to at least talk with you about at some point, Duncan, doesn't have to be the first thing we talk about, but I just want to say it before I forget, is I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Well, you have two full-time paid contributors, is that right?
Great.
And then kind of the most senior person, the team lead type person, is a volunteer.
Yeah.
And then there are some number of volunteers also working. That's obviously like not the same scenario as a commercial application where everybody's normally everybody's full-time, or maybe there's some part-time contractors or something like that, but never is it the case where there's like a large number of volunteers contributing to the application. It's always like a fairly steady team. So at some point I maybe wanted to have us talk about that and what that means for the whole thing, because I think it introduces some interesting factors. But before that, I think we were talking about like, what are all the issues we're
Sorry,
facing?
I am still listening.
Uh-huh.
Please keep going.
Yeah. What are all of the issues we're facing, and kind of what do we want to tackle first? Correct me if my memory is wrong, Duncan, but my memory is that we said performance is an absolute must. If we get the performance issues straightened out, but nothing else, that would still be very bad. Because there are other things that are very important too. I think the UI overhaul is one thing you specifically mentioned. So if we only did the performance, that would be, I think maybe what you said was like, you would consider that to be a great achievement. But if that's all we did and we didn't do these other things, then that would still not be considered a complete success in the eyes of the organization. Do I kind of have that right?
Yeah, I think so. And just in terms of just to define performance, I think there's two thoughts there. Sorry, this is the reason I had to AFK briefly. So the one is, when I say performance, I really mean stability. The website shouldn't crash. I mean, obviously it should be responsive and that kind of thing. And the other is, I would expect to see performance or stability as a result of some kind of paying off technical debt, essentially. So I'm imagining it to come as the result of some of the kind of fundamental rewrites and reworks that we need to do as part of trying to make the code base sustainable.
Yeah. Okay. I want to take yet more notes here.
Sorry, I do feel like every time you make a statement, I'm like, yes, and then send you back into the tank.
Okay, so a meta comment here. It's like, I think I personally have a tendency to like exasperate and annoy people, because we talk about, I don't mean just me and you, Duncan, but like, we talk about issues, whoever I'm talking with, and people are like, well, okay, let's just like get moving on this and like start solving it already. But it's like, hang on a second, like before we start doing the thing, we have to decide what we're going to do. And these things are so complicated and nuanced that it tends to the complexity of the reality of it tends to be much greater than the amount of stuff that a normal, reasonable person is willing to discuss. And for me, I'm not a normal, reasonable person, and so I'm willing to like keep digging and digging and digging until we get to the root of it. But in that process, it's often overwhelming to the other person who I'm talking to, because there's so much. But I do think that it saves time overall, no matter how painful it might be up front.
Yeah.
Anyway, what the heck we were just talking about? Oh yeah, performance. Maybe the word scaling captures it more accurately.
Scalability, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, scalability. And my understanding is that right now the system's scalability is a bit behind where it needs to be, because right now there currently are some outages and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have actually managed to kind of temporarily resolve that by just throwing more money at our servers.
Oh, okay.
So in essence, we have vertically scaled. But if we think about kind of the next 3 years or so, I don't know if we can keep vertically scaling forever. And we want to figure out, a horizontal scaling solution before it becomes absolutely necessary. Because if we don't have one by the time it does, everything blows up,
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like we have like contained the scalability issue. Like obviously there's tons of stuff inside that, and it's by no means clear, at least to me, like what needs to be done and stuff like that. But we've at least like defined that area. We know what it is, what it isn't, all that stuff. So maybe let's set that aside for a second. Last time we talked about scalability and like the UI overhaul. Tell me this, which you might have already told me, but like, if all we accomplish is we fix the scalability issues and we do this UI overhaul that we're wanting to do and nothing else, how would that be viewed by you personally and by the organization and stuff like that?
I think if we get a UI overhaul, that would be well received by kind of the non-technical average user. Scalability, I think, is kind of a tragic quest in the sense that as soon as it starts working, nobody cares.
Right.
So yeah, but I think that would be a good place. But perhaps, yeah, I would be quite concerned if we achieve both of those things, but we haven't paid off our technical debt and improved the design of our actual code.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I could choose, I would say scalability and tech debt over like UI overhaul. The only reason UI overhauls even in the conversation is kind of to make users feel like something tangible has happened, as opposed to a whole, a year, 18 months of work that is just almost invisible.
I see. Okay. That makes total sense to me.
So, what I have seen, again, this is not necessarily in the Rails context, but sometimes, to address performance problems, we throw money at it and, it solves the problem for that period of time. But then it sort of becomes another problem, down the lane, and then it requires you to throw more money at it. Have you considered, running two instances in parallel? Whether does that work for the application, or does it have to be only one instance? Is that the monolith type of thing?
Yeah, so I can speak to that quickly if you're happy for me to, Jason. And
Please
I think
do.
it's actually...
Oh, Jason, only if you're happy. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm happy for any guys to jump in, and this can totally be a group thing.
No, I mean, I think it's an excellent question, because, if we can just run multiple instances of the monolith, that actually gives us horizontal scalability immediately. So why can't we do that? If to do that, we would probably want to Dockerize the application, because that seems like the easiest way to run multiple instances. in order to Dockerize it, I am not the best person to tell you why we can't, but there is, I know that we have really like deeply baked in reasons that we can't.
Of course.
Oof, I'm trying to think if there's anything constructive I could say. But yeah, I think basically like certain elements of our deployment are reliant on like chef configurations and a whole bunch of like just the fundamental way our application is set up means that we can't actually Dockerize it at the moment. There is like a list of things we could do to make it Dockerizable.
Understood.
Yeah. But I think what I would, and a question I would be interested in asking the team is there a reason that we're trying to move to kind of service-based architecture and scale that as opposed to just make the monolith scalable? Yeah, like Dockerize the monolith and then we're actually happy. Yeah, I think it's a good question.
Okay. So let me to zoom back out a little bit. I'll say again, if we achieve scalability and the UI overhaul, I'm saying this just to make extra sure I understand. If we achieve those two things, that would be a pretty good outcome.
I think so.
And sorry, I'm only speaking outwardly because like there's still the technical debt issues, and like I know that we want to address that stuff. I'm trying to make a bit of a separation between like outwardly visible results, and I'm trying to make a distinction between means and ends.
Right. Okay. So is the question kind of like how, if we think about our stakeholders or our users, like would users be happy if that's what we achieved? Is that a fair rephrasing?
Yeah.
I think so. I think if the website looked nicer and stopped crashing, that'd be sick. There's probably also some nice features we could throw in, but those would be dependent on the rewrite or, you know, on some more fundamental changes. So yeah, short answer, yes.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm also thinking like at a higher level, like business level, even though it's a nonprofit, but like talking at that level, if it were the outcome that this was viewed as a failed experiment, like, oh, we tried getting some full-time maintainers, and that didn't get us the results we wanted. Now we're going to not do that anymore and we're back to square one. Like, obviously that would be a really bad outcome. So like whatever it takes to like make that not be the case, if we can get like enough of a success that something like the current scenario can continue, hopefully even better and better over time, but at least having the level of bandwidth we have now, obviously that's going to be good. So like I'm thinking of the question of like, what does it take to at least have this not be called a failed experiment?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the scalability and the UI overhaul. And then the other question is how. And obviously, even within both those things, scalability and UI overhaul, there are many finer grained what's inside of that. But let's talk for a second about those things in connection with the tech debt. Because you said that, like, you know, tell me if I have this right, in order for you to feel like this is really a success, getting some of that tech debt paid down would kind of be a necessary part of all this.
Yeah.
By the way, can you introduce your cat to us?
Absolutely. This is Comfrey. He's my firstborn child. And I'm pretty sure he understands that I exist. But yeah. So I'm actually renting at the place I am at the moment, and the owners are very often away, so I end up house sitting a lot. So we got him last November, and he's basically grown up with me. So
okay.
Yeah.
What is his name?
Comfrey.
How do you spell that?
Cumfrey.
I see. I've never heard that name before.
It's I don't know if it's a South African plant, but it's very popular with like small scale farmers. It's a very good support species. It puts the right nutrients in the ground. You can cut it and make it tea. It's a very nerdy like permaculture reference.
I see. yeah, I just wanted to get acquainted. When I see that paw, I know who it is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So technical debt. In a sense, the technical debt is not the symptom; it's maybe a root cause. But the symptom of that problem is that the app is. Well, let's talk about the symptoms because there's maybe multiple. It makes things take longer to change. What else?
Yeah, I mean, take longer to change is huge. I would say I think your comments last week about not making the code worse were interesting, because I think there was certainly a phase where we were merging PRs. I think this was before my time. I think our current leader has done a really good job of stopping this. But yeah, we were definitely at a point merging PRs that made the code worse. And while it is very slow for us to add new features, I think our current team has done a good job of like, we aren't merging any PRs that make the code worse at the moment.
Okay.
But yeah, it does take a long time to merge PRs that improve things.
Yeah, and that raises another interesting point, which is that tech debt tends to be self-propagating, because the code is maybe structured in a way where, okay, I could do this in a way that takes 30 minutes and I make the code just a little bit worse, or I could take 20 hours and clean this code up enough to then make the 30-minute change. And it would actually take like 5 minutes at that point. But then it takes 20 hours and 5 minutes instead of 30 minutes, and that doesn't feel justifiable. So instead, I'll just make it a little bit worse. And that's kind of how it tends to go. Is that your experience sometimes?
I think so. I think we are good at not making the 30-minute change. And what we do instead is we just don't make any change.
Okay.
So somebody's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like this thing on this page worked slightly differently? And we were like, yes, it would, but that's going to make the code worse. We don't want to make the code worse, so we're not going to change anything because we don't have capacity to put the 20 hours in.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would kind of, I guess if we zoom into this a bit, there are like two levels to it. On the one hand, you need to take 20 hours and like fundamentally rewrite this controller logic or whatever. And so that's difficult, but it's very, because so much of our code is so tightly coupled, it's very difficult to figure out how to introduce PRs that change things iteratively. So once you've done the 20 hours of code, it's in one big disgusting PR. And it's especially for a volunteer team, it's very hard to review that. So it takes a long time to make improvements to the code. Once somebody's written an improvement to the code, it's very difficult to review because of the size of the PR. And the level of tech debt we have and just weird stuff in the code means that it's very difficult to even understand what is happening in the code. Because there's a lot of just, business logic baked into the model, for example, as just an easy example of something that's not very like Railsy, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, the PRs are hard to review, even if you have the knowledge about the system. But having knowledge about the system is also difficult because the system is so arcane.
I see.
Yeah, so those all kind of add up to the same thing, which is it's very slow to make improvements.
Yeah. Okay. And this isn't something people talk about a ton, but like, what are maybe some of the emotional effects of the tech debt? Is it frustrating? Does it hurt morale? That kind of stuff.
I think there's kind of two classes of people who interact with it. Those who are those who have the knowledge to even try and address the tech debt. I think it's frustrating, it's exhausting, and it probably, I don't even have the knowledge to really wade in there, but it probably feels a little bit like being out in the Wild West on your own, and you just really need to hope that what you're changing works. And then I think for kind of everyone else, it's I don't know if it's demoralizing, but I think it kind of what you want in a team is a sense of momentum and a sense of like we're on a, you know, we're building a success spiral. And the line just looks pretty flat a lot of the time. And I think that contributes to a general sense that kind of things move slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I imagine it's like for volunteers who only have a little bit of time per week, by the time you like load everything into your head or even try to, you might be out of time before you even get to the part where you're trying to actually change something. That's just a guess.
Exactly. No, I think that's very true. And that's assuming you actually have everything you need on your own to go and make the change. Because very often it's like you spend 2 hours trying to dive into the thing, you hit something that you have no idea about. You need to meet with somebody who's more experienced in the code base to figure it out. They can only meet in 4 days' time. Even if you can make the slot, you'll only have time to work on it again next weekend. Like it's a very frustrating you know, workflow.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I was gonna make a note, but I forgot what it was. Oh yeah. Tell me if this seems right. The technical debt makes it harder for volunteers to contribute.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounded almost sounds too obvious to even write down, but I will anyway. Makes it harder for volunteers to contribute.
And I think the next level of that is, I think the state of the code base turns away prospective volunteers.
Oh.
Yeah. So, you know, we're running Rails, which is already not amazing in terms of attracting volunteers.
Right.
But I think if we had a well-documented code base that, you know, was easy to kind of dive, that was logically structured, it would be more attractive than diving into like, we don't really have documentation for this. Good luck out there, you know. See you in a week when you need more help, kind of thing. Yeah, it's
okay.
not a very attractive proposal.
Okay. So somebody told me this, they shared with me this delightfully tautological quote, which is, things are the way they are because they got that way, which is kind of like not saying anything, but at the same time, it's illuminating, because it's like the code in any particular code base is really just an artifact. And what almost matters more is the processes that created that code and the processes that are being applied now to change that code. And what I've heard from you, Duncan, is this is my interpretation. Tell me how accurate this seems. This has been a volunteer-built project over the course of many years. Seems like a lot of cooks in the kitchen adding their little bit of contribution here and there. I could be wrong because I'm totally just guessing, but maybe the system isn't a product of one mind kind of overseeing all the technical aspects over the course of years, but it's many minds making contributions. And those things are all factors in why the code is the way it is today. How accurate is my understanding there?
I'd say partially. We can. I think you can probably split the history of the system into different eras.
Okay.
When there was kind of one mind or one strong vision who had enough technical understanding of the code to set a vision for it, and you know, then for 2 years or so, 2 or 3 years, enacted that vision, and then it would shift to a different team leader or a different key person. So rather than a lot of people working on it at the same time, it's different people adding different layers on top of what people have done before. And so certainly not always with a full understanding of why or how something was done.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So let me try to digest what we've talked about so far. Okay, so the symptoms of the technical debt are that the tech debt makes changes take a long time, it's frustrating and exhausting, makes it harder for volunteers to contribute, it can turn away potential volunteers. And I remember what I wanted to ask now, which is, do you think, well, so what I'm thinking about right now is the current dev processes. And I wonder if we have any opportunities there to help our situation by improving some of the dev processes. But I've only caught the smallest fragments of what your current dev process is. So I'm not sure what the opportunities for improvement may be there, but I wanted to raise that to see what you think.
What do you mean by dev process?
Oh, one example I hear is that you'll have a pull request that is quite large, and so it's hard to review and get merged due to its size. And that makes me think, for example, well, could we do things in smaller pull requests? That kind of thing.
So I think, so in terms of like who can review stuff, our reviewers are pretty limited. We have like 2 React people who are very good at React. So we're busy migrating to React frontend. So they take a look at all the React code, and I have no idea what's going on there, but it seems to be going pretty well. And then we have like 1 person who understands Rails deep enough to confidently review it, and that's our team lead. And I think that we're doing a decent job of, when we're creating something new, doing fairly modular and well-scoped PRs that are more easy to review. I can give examples if they're useful, but they might also just be arcane because not everyone understands our system. But then, you know, if it's the one person who understands the Rails code, who sees, okay, this change needs to be made, I need to change an existing system. So it's very difficult to segment out and only change this part because everything is tightly coupled. So, and if it's him kind of making the change anyway, and he's the only one who's going to understand it, I think there's a sense of like, let's just put it all in one PR. I can't speak fully for his decision making, but yeah.
Okay.
So I think we struggle. Long story short, we struggle a lot more with existing systems, especially when like the person who should review it and the person who's actually able to write it are the same person.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. And I have no opinion on that area for now. Okay. So the question I'm pondering now is like, could we address, and I'm not saying this is a good idea, I'm just asking, could we do it? Could we address the scalability issues without doing much to address the tech debt issues?
I am genuinely curious about that, and I think the team's pretty busy at the moment, but I think it is a question worth raising. As Sanjit was saying, what if we just like instancify the monolith and then? Sorry,
it's okay.
It's the other cat wanting to get in, but he can deal. Yeah, and then we just vertically scale that. That is an interesting thought. I would imagine our main issue there is actually not necessarily the performance of the monolith itself, but maybe database performance, or they're both equal concerns. So even if we have multiple instances, if they all need to speak to one database, that database might still die. And I don't know how much room there is to necessarily optimize our queries. Again, that's not my area, but kind of the gut concern I have is a lot of this stuff tends to be very tightly coupled, and trying to optimize a database query might mean actually, okay, there's 20 or 30 hours of refactor work or of tech that needs to be paid off before we can do that. That is the worst case scenario, I would say. It may well be possible that we can just chuck the monolith in instances and that will significantly improve things.
And I want to be careful not to mix different ideas, because there's at least two questions, I think. One question is like, if maybe there's three questions. Okay, let's make it two questions, and here's the questions I want to pose. Presuming that it is possible to solve all of the scalability issues without paying down any of the tech debt, would that be attractive?
Interesting question.
And that's,
I guess it depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say
depends.
that's
Yeah.
the one question, and then the how it might be achieved is a totally separate question. But maybe let's forget about the how for a second and just ask, like, in theory, if we can do that, do we like that idea?
It's definitely an attractive idea. I think it depends how long it takes, because in a sense, what we need is breathing room to try to pay off this tech debt. And if we could have scalability not be an issue for another year with, I don't know how much work it would need to be, a month of work or something, maybe half that, I have no idea. That might be something worth considering. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because, like, you know, this is a very ignorant statement, so take it with a grain of salt, but, like, I don't know for a fact that there's not a way that we could, for example, do a week's worth of work and have all the scalability issues resolved for, let's say a year, and we just buy ourselves a year's worth of time on the scalability issues. That would obviously be a tremendous win if something like that can be achieved.
I think so. And I think if I had to kind of criticize how we've approached the scalability issue in general, maybe very ignorantly, but I think being programmers, we look at an inefficient system and say, well, the system's inefficient, that's the problem. How do we make it more efficient? And I think maybe, look, we're also, as an organization, we are coming from a state where we had a very constrained budget. And so, throwing an extra couple $100 at a server just wasn't an option. And literally, I think in the last year, that started to shift. So on the one hand, I think our thinking has been a bit constrained in terms of, like, well, how can we fix the fundamental root cause? And we've been less partial to, like, what if we throw more money at it? Or in a similar vein, like, what if we do a quick fix that gives us a lot more time?
Yeah. And of course, there's not going to be an option that doesn't cost money, because you either have to pay people to make the performance issue go away, or pay AWS or whatever to make the performance issue go away. Just a question of which seems better. Okay. Yeah, and then the UI overhaul is a lot fuzzier of an issue, or it's a squishier issue, or however you want to put it, because that's very subjective. It's like the scalability need is a very concrete thing. It's like either it can handle the level of traffic we get, or it can't. It's kind of a binary thing. Whereas with the UI overhaul, it's like that could be defined in an infinite number of ways, depending on how the people who are in charge of that want to define it. Can we talk about that a little bit? Like the overall objective is what? Is it to make people feel like something good has happened? I don't know. Can you I think you can obviously do a better job of explaining it than I just did. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I think the overall objective, I'd distinguish between internal and external. I think internally, the overall objective is to get to the point where we have a system that we feel is maintainable and can handle 10 years of growth at the current level we're at. Potentially, I think 10 doublings might be a bit much, but you know, on that scale. Externally, I think probably the desire is to be seen as a team that is able to like effectively, one, manage the website at a fundamental level so the thing doesn't crash all the time, but two, is able to like make changes to and maintain the website.
Yeah, okay. And when you say to be seen as, to be seen by whom?
I'd say primarily by our users, certainly by kind of the core staff volunteer team. But yeah, I think especially by our users. Because frankly, they've gone 4 years with pretty much the same website and a lot of really good feature ideas that aren't, a lot of bad feature ideas, obviously, but a lot of really good feature ideas that haven't been implemented for no good like ostensibly no good reason.
Right. Like from their perspective, it's the same old website and it's like, what are these people even doing? There haven't been any changes made.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's, you know, it's common sense stuff that you think would be quick to add that just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that must, if I were in that position, I would feel like kind of embarrassed because it's like they don't know how hard it is to make these seemingly small changes, but it makes one look bad when you can't do those things.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, we can't be just driven by ego and what our external perception is, but you know, I think we want to be an effective team, and one of the advantages of the WCA is we have this very like tight-knit community. And yeah, so there's also just a desire to do right by the community, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of speaks to what I was about to ask, which is like, okay, it's arguably good for the users to be happy with the site, but like you could also say screw them, like their opinion doesn't matter that much. They can live with it and muddle through, like big deal. What would you say to that?
I guess if we have a good enough reason to say that, we can. But that, yeah, that's just. I believe ultimately that we're in the position we are to try to serve the needs of our users. And if we're not taking them seriously, then I question the long-term viability of what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because like with the commercial business, I think the answer to that question would be something like, well, if we don't serve our users well, they will churn and go to a competitor or something like that. But the motives are a little different here. It's like, why does this organization exist? It doesn't exist to make money primarily. It exists to do this good thing for the community. And if you're not achieving the objective of the organization to do these good things for the community, then you're not really doing what you want to be doing.
I mean, I think we could certainly make more of like a fear-based case. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, in terms of like, you know, well, if we aren't serving people's needs, then either like, I mean, we rely heavily on people making third-party software that augments our core offering in various ways, but like, you know, there's a danger of somebody else building a competing system or even a competing organization.
Right.
And on some level, certainly in terms of the system, I'm like, well, if ultimately people need to build a different system to meet their needs, then like, fair enough, I guess. Like, I want user needs to be met, but yeah, it would really, really suck if we as the team that's supposed to do that were ultimately not able to.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Here's how I might think about the UI overhaul stuff. And I have a little bit of discomfort with labeling it UI overhaul, because it's
Mm.
like, maybe that's not exactly it. Maybe we're talking about the means to an end and not the end itself. It's like, what is it that we really want to achieve?
Right.
We want a better experience for the competitors.
I think, yeah, good question. I think there's two things here, and it kind of almost depends who you speak to. My bias is certainly like, I want our current users to have a really good experience. I think if you speak to like our marketing team or to our board, there's more of a concern around, we want to be seen as an organization of international caliber. And if the first thing that a potential sponsor, a potential partner, or even a potential competitor sees is a bit of a lackluster homepage and an unintuitive registration UX, and a lack of obvious features, you know, that doesn't speak well to the organization.
Interesting. Okay, I want to note these things. Okay, so from the perspective of, I heard you say marketing team.
Yes.
Who else? You mentioned other,
and the board.
Okay.
Yeah. Board of directors.
Okay, from the perspective of the board and the marketing team. Okay. Can you say some of that stuff again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, from their perspective, essentially, they want a website that makes us look like an organization of international caliber.
Yeah.
So part of that, I think, is just visually looking good. And who are we trying to look like that to? Sponsors, potential partners, and potential cubers, I would say, or potential competition attendees.
Okay. Apologies.
No
I'm behind a little bit. Okay.
I'm saying a lot. That's fine.
To potential sponsors, cubers,
and partners in
partners. Okay.
Yeah, not necessarily cash sponsors. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe those three kinds of audiences or whatever, they're not looking at the same exact parts of the website or evaluating it in the same exact way.
Potentially. Certainly I think a cuber would interact much more with like the registration system and the competition listing and that kind of thing. But I think there are a lot of shared they're all hitting the homepage. They're all probably wanting to look at a list of competitions. They probably want to look at a list of like results, you know, what are the 100 fastest 3x3 times or whatever. This is the 3x3. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen just for a second, just so we can look at what we're talking about. Okay. Yeah, so this is the website, and what is wanted, at least from the perspective of the board and the marketing team, is for the World Cube Association to look like an organization of international caliber.
Yeah.
What are the general feelings of people in the organization just regarding, like, when you go to the website and look at it, do they feel like this is appropriate and like looks good enough or not? And if you can tell me any of that kind of stuff.
Don't know if that came through. That's the first time I've seen that cat fall due to his own error. So yeah, I just linked Speedcubing Australia as an alternative vision of what a website could look like.
I see.
And I think if you like tab between the two, this one looks a lot more professional, you know.
Okay.
Obviously this is all subjective. Can you repeat the question? Sorry, my cat falling. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, he can go chase mice. Sorry, could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, it was just a general probing of like an open-ended question of how do people feel about the website currently. And I guess I'm trying to measure like what is the delta between how people perceive the site now and where we want the site to be.
I think the delta. I think people generally don't regard the site very well at the moment. I think it looks a bit old. It looks a bit basic. Yeah, I think those are the general impressions, both among like staff and among general cubers as well. We did a survey a while ago, or last year. We have an annual survey of impressions. What are the vibes with the website? And a significant chunk of that feedback was kind of look and feel of the website. Doesn't feel modern. Doesn't feel up to expectation.
Okay.
I would also note, what information are we displaying? Like if you look at latest news and announcements, that's all very community focused. If you're not already an active cuber and potentially a very active cuber, like none of this matters to you. Like we've got a senior delegate announcement. None of you know what that is. We added exceptions to the WCRP. We're calling for staff applicants. Like all of this stuff is very, very like community focused. And the question is that the first thing that anyone coming to the website should see?
Okay. This is all really helpful. So I'm gonna cross out in my list of our two kind of problems or objectives or whatever. I'm gonna cross out UI overhaul because I think it's really something else. It's like, okay, we want to address the scalability issues and we want to fix the negative perception of the website. I don't know if that's how we want to express it, but something more like that, right?
I think so.
Because again, UI overhaul is a means to an end, but like, what is the actual end?
Yes. I think the end, yeah. So for me, I think the end is turn around the community's perception of the effectiveness of the software team.
I see. Okay.
Like go from people feeling like nothing really changes on the website and we're just barely struggling to like keep it up during the World Championships to like, okay, wow, these guys have things under control. No one's really worried about, no one's making memes about this competition's too big, registration's going to crash. And rather there's a sense of excitement for like, what's the next new feature we're going to get? Okay. That would be like freaking
sick. Is that something that's happened? The memes?
I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely like, there's definitely a lot of, I don't know if someone's actually made a meme template, but there's a lot of like registration system crashes or has crashed jokes.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Want a better no. Okay. We want the dev team to be perceived as being on top of things, being able to make changes quickly. I don't know how to best capture what you said.
Yeah, I'd say one is being in control of the website almost, which I think most directly means like things don't crash, even if something really big like registration for Worlds is happening. And two is effective at like advancing the state of the website, which primarily in my mind is adding new features.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I'm having some thoughts. So it's like there's a couple layers to it. It's like one is like at any snapshot in time, you want people to look at the website and be like, okay, this is like a legit organization, world class, whatever. But then there's also like, over time, you want people to say like, okay, I hold the technical people at the World Cube Association in high esteem. From my outside perspective, I can see that they're actually actively doing work. They seem like, you know, they're competent people doing their job, blah blah blah. Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, that can be achieved without a UI overhaul. I think the website can look exactly the same, and we can still foster that perception.
Yeah. Okay. And that seems like it's probably a desire that's shared by more than just you. Like,
Definitely.
in general,
Yeah.
I would imagine that everybody in the World Cube Association is interested in cubers perceiving the World Cube Association as having technical competence and the ability to respond to needs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So I'm going to write down scalability. I'm trying to concisely capture this. Positive perception of, no, I'm gonna okay, scalability is no good. I'm gonna word that differently. The site, I'm stating things as things that will be true in, if we fast forward to a year from now or whatever, things that will be true if we have succeeded. Site never goes down due to traffic.
Yeah. Even under exceptional circumstances, I would say.
Okay. Site never goes down due to traffic, even under exceptional circumstances. Okay. And Duncan, can you take a swing at the technical abilities? Like, what would be true in the future if we've succeeded in that area?
Stakeholders believe in the ability of the devs to make positive changes to the website.
Okay. Stakeholders believe.
Trust.
All right. Can you say the whole sentence again for me?
Yeah. So stakeholders trust the dev team to make positive changes to the website.
Okay. Stakeholders trust the dev team to make positive changes to the website.
We could change positive changes to something like make changes that meet their needs.
Yeah.
Or improve their experience. I don't know.
Yeah, stakeholders trust the dev team to make changes in response to user needs, to make timely changes in response to user needs. What do you think?
I would probably keep it at to make changes that improve their experience.
Okay, to make changes that improve their experience.
Because it's not necessarily that somebody has an idea and we can turn it around quickly, as much as that we have a vision for what a better website looks like, and there's consistent evidence that we're executing that.
Okay.
So address the problems we know about, that sort of thing. That's what you are saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
way of putting it.
Okay, what I have written so far is stakeholders trust the dev team to make changes that improve
Their experience.
that improve what experience?
I would just say their experience.
Okay, who is they in that? Who is they?
That is competitors, probably.
Okay.
Competitors / users.
Okay. Competitors / users experience. Okay. And obviously this doesn't have to be the absolute perfection of wording as long as it accurately captures what we want it to. Stakeholders trust the dev team to make changes that improve competitors / users experience. Okay. And then that third one is kind of that perception by potential sponsors, potential competitors, potential partners. Yeah, can you take a swing at that one for me, Duncan?
The website represents the WCA as an organization of international caliber.
Okay. The website represents the WCA as an organization of international caliber. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. It's an organization of international caliber. Okay. So just a real quick restate. I have 3 things written down as our big objectives. Site never goes down to traffic, even under exceptional circumstances. Stakeholders trust the dev team to make changes that improve competitors / users experience. And the website represents the WCA as an organization of international caliber. Okay. Okay. Well, now 3 hours plus into our conversations, I think maybe we have our 3 objectives.
I can throw in a 4th.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Maybe. And this may not, this may be a driver rather than an outcome, but like the website is an attractive project for volunteers to contribute to, or the software, the repo, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna write that down. And sorry, Duncan, can you say that again for me?
Yeah. The website is an attractive project for volunteers to contribute to.
Yeah.
We could say volunteer developers instead of volunteers.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, we're a little bit over time today. But here's what I might invite us to talk about next time and or think about in between. So sometimes I think about these things in terms of investments and expected returns on investments. And, kind of like what I talked about with the performance issues. Like, if there were a way, if we somehow discovered like a button we could push in the AWS console, which is like, oh, check this box to make everything fast. Okay. That's a very small investment and it could have a big return. Silly example, but like obviously something like that is much easier than like cleaning up all the technical debt and fundamentally restructuring everything and stuff like that. So in general, if I were in your shoes, what I would be seeking is things with a high ratio of or a low ratio, low ratio of investment to expected payoff. And obviously both those things are like estimates, estimated effort, estimated cost to estimated payoff.
Yeah.
Because maybe even in these other areas, like the website represents the WCA as an organization of international caliber. I know that you've expressed things that like make even seemingly really trivial changes. There are obstacles to those for technical reasons, but like, could we, for example, just move some links around, put some lipstick on the pig, and make things look nicer without actually doing all that much work? For all I know, the answer is absolutely not for certain reasons, but I don't know for a fact that we can't do something like that. So that's the kind of thing that I might be interested in exploring next. Just real quick, do you have any initial feelings about that kind of approach?
Probably no initial feelings, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah. Apart from this, we're now at the point where we're starting to speak about like the real priorities of the real team. So I'm definitely interested in starting to not just speak as myself, but try to also chat to some of the team members and make sure this is like that I've accurately represented our situation. But yeah, in general, I think this notion of obviously the purist in all of us wants to have the right ultimate solution to the problem. But yeah, this notion of what are the quick wins, low effort, high effect things we can do that'll give us the breathing room we need to make the fundamental changes. I think that's a question really worth considering.
Yeah, because it's like I'm completely with you, like in my desire for you guys to be able to clean up the technical debt that you want to do and stuff like that. But it's like, it's almost like a privilege that has to be earned, because it's like, or maybe it's like, it's something you have to buy. Like you have to buy time to be able to do that. And so like, can we, in the meantime, put some lipstick on some of our pigs, and that buys us some time so that we can be like, here's this pretty lady. Just, this is good for you for now. Now we're going to go over here, and now we've bought ourselves some time to clean this stuff up. I wonder if that might be a viable approach.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question.
Okay. Well, thanks as always, Duncan. And thanks, Sanjeet, for hanging out with us. And thank you, dear viewer. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Okay.
Cheers, everybody.